we'll just move on to the next presentation. The next presentation will be by Dr. Pankaj B. Shah, Professor and Head Department of Community Medicine, Srihar. Sir will be throwing the light on questionnaire design and validation of it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, like Dr. Matangi, I'm using two devices, but my second device doesn't have a microphone, so I don't think so there will be any echo will happen. There is one device with the name only Pankaj. Can you make that as a sharing device? And
Okay,
what
sir,
I'll do, just switch off my video so that the quality of audio will be good. Thank you to Mahalakshmi Madam and the team and all the deans and the administratives and the organization for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
No, I want that only with the Pankaj name to be a share. Okay, I think
Yes.
now
Yes,
I
sir,
can
you are-
share my screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just give me 1 minute. If I'm able to share, we'll get the idea and you tell me. Sharing the content, it still shows. Yes, I'm sharing my screen.
You can see, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes. So I think we'll start. I'm very happy that our train was delayed because of some issues. And then again, the train is back on time. When our motorman, our driver was very good to did some kind of a good running in between. And we are back on time. I hope I don't make as a driver again the train delayed. And hopefully all of us be safe on time and ready to leave from whichever place we are. Just confirm if I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir. Clear.
Okay, thank you. Now, whenever any presentation is being done, we always see about the speaker two things. The first is a slide and second is a slide number, so that we get the rough idea when this fellow is going to finish. Very simple. And I don't know how many of you are able to see that miniature. I'm using a PDF and not the slide. It contains only 2 slides. So at any point of time, either you can switch off or I can switch off so that the session is over. Hopefully we'll take some opportunity to discuss some question it comes up. Now we are coming slightly away from the sampling, where we decide what is my objective and how I identify the people and select them in the study. But most important for us also, what questions we are going to ask. And that's why the questionnaire comes into the picture. It can be some kind of a scale, say depression scale, or it can be a simple data collection tool. It can be some instrument. It can be some kind of a clinical parameters, and it also may include some amount of examination, investigation, and so on when I say data collection tool. But specifically in this session, we are going to talk on questionnaire or so-called scale, and sometimes the scales are also used with the terminology called as instrument. This instrument doesn't mean a mechanical type of instrument. A depression scale can also be considered as an instrument because it measures certain aspects of the depression. So now, as my topic is already there, my designation and other details are there, I'll directly go to my next slide, which is the main slide what we are talking about. And it contains only important headings. And I want to give a 2 disclaimer here that this presentation, I do not want to make it full of statistics, because when we talk about validation of questionnaire, people talk about too much on types of reliability, all kind of calculations, all kind of factorial analysis and calculation, all kind of validity with its calculation. And finally, what happens, a student or a faculty or a PG or an audience who is attending feels that the validation of question is nothing but the statistics and only statistics. Here I want to make this presentation today without any statistics, because my main purpose is only understand the concept and not go into too much of statistical detail, where you can take the help of some statistician or some friend, and over a period of time you can yourself learn, because it's not the rocket science which we cannot learn. But again, we need to understand we cannot be in the field of everybody. We have to have our own field. Our own field is most important, and probably we can take help of other people who are around us in the same specialty. Now, first and foremost, I want to ask a question. Should I have a questionnaire? That's my most important question. I have planned my study. My study has certain amount of aim, and from that broad aim, I have decided to have 1 or 2 or 3 objectives. Probably one objective is the primary objective and second and third are the secondary objective. Now I need to decide, should I have a questionnaire? Now, the first and foremost, we need to decide whenever objectives are finalized, my data collection tool also have to be finalized, and the number of questions, number of items which are there in my questionnaire or data collection tool have to match with my objective, so that at the end I can decide whatever I am asking or whatever data I am collecting is really matching with my objective or no. Because many times at the end of the study, I realized that I have collected so much of information is not fitting anywhere, probably is waste of my time and the research as well as the participant time. At the same time, so many important issues were there which I never collected in my lifetime. And then we land up in the problem. And that's why first we need to decide what is my primary objective and what is my data collection tool. And from the data collection tool, I need to match the questions which are matching with the respective objectives. In this data collection tool, largely we will have some aspect of questions what we are asking, some amount of probably examination, as lot of us or all of us here are involved in some care about our healthcare sciences which involves the clinical examination. It may involve some amount of data collection from investigations, all from the records, and maybe management and so on, and all kind of follow-up studies. So I'm not going to talk about the complete data collection tool. I'm going to concentrate myself on the questionnaire, and then I'll jump to the valuation of questionnaire. Now, as again to repeat that, I have decided my objective, and I have to decide for this my objective, what kind of data collection tool is required. Say a very funny and very pathetic example. I want to find out the PFT of the people who are attending here in the webinar. What I need finally, everybody should have a PFT machine, should measure their PFT values, and the report is required. Probably I did not talk to anybody. Though informed consent is important, though prior history of the respiratory system and other problems may help me. But if my primary objective is PFT, then I only need the PFT value. That means somewhere I am wrong in my designing my objective. We have to be very, very clear, because I have seen people who write their objective on the basis of investigation and ask 100 questions which actually does not serve the purpose. Here there is a need to have a modification of objective so that whatever questions they are asking, they are fitting to each other. Now coming back to my first question, do I need a questionnaire in my data collection form? And this can be only decided by my objective. If my objective tells me that a questions have to be asked, then only a questionnaire has to be there. If my objective says directly go to investigation, ideally, I am again repeating, ideally only instrumental examination is required, questionnaire is not required, but that is totally wrong. We cannot have any research for that matter without asking certain basic features, basic symptoms, basic aspects which are required for my objective. So if I have to ask about the PFT, naturally I need to know something about the respiratory disorder, something related to common symptoms. That's the first and foremost question. Now, once I have decided I have to have a questionnaire, I need to decide my second important question, which is the first line of the slide. Should I have online question? Should I have my own questionnaire or I use somebody's scale? This is the most important. If you ask me as a researcher, I'll be very happy if people use their own questionnaire. But unfortunately, if I ask my PG what topic you want to take or what minor study you want to do it, what they will do, oh, I am interested in depression. They will type 2 lines in the Google depression. Suddenly, scale will automatically log in and it will say depression scale among adolescents, and my PG will come. I have exhaustively studied in the review of literature, and there's a one study which is most important, which I want to do, is a depression scale. Actually, nowhere the postgraduate or the people who are involved thought why they want to do it. Since it was easily available in the Google search, they started with the idea, and finally the questionnaire became my objective, rather in the reverse order, where my objective is the most important and then the questionnaire has to come. So again, I'm repeating, please don't make your study decided by the questionnaire. Your study objective should decide the questionnaire. I think, am I clear on this very, very important first take home message, to say that my study will decide if the questionnaire is required or the data collection form is required. And second important thing, my study will decide I should have my own questionnaire or somebody else's questionnaire, and not because it is easily available in the Google search. Once I have decided that I have to have a questionnaire, If I am looking at the abstract science, now here I have to very well important, what is the meaning of abstract science? Suppose I ask somebody who is there in this webinar, what is your age? They will say my completed age is say 46, 47, 39, 18, 30. There cannot be any vague answer with this. If I ask somebody, are you diabetes or non-diabetes? Please type in the chat box. Don't type now. Otherwise, so many messages will come and people's attention will get diverted. The answer is very clear cut, yes or no. When there is an answer is very clear cut, it's better to have my own questionnaire. I am not majoring an abstract science. When I have to measure certain very, very specific things, is best thing I develop my own questionnaire. Say I want to find out what is the prevalence of COVID positive people on the day of interview in a community. I have to have a specific question. Is cough present? Is fever present? This present, that present, and finally RT-PCR report done, not done, CT scan done, not done. Very clear cut. I have to be very, very specific answer, and I have to develop my own questionnaire. But take another example of some kind of a phenomena which is abstract in nature, and there cannot be clear cut yes and no answer. Take the example, suddenly I reach home today late, say because of this program, I got delayed, unnecessarily I get carried away, say for example, and my wife asked me, first question, do you love me? I don't think so I can easily answer yes or no. Is a very, very abstract science. When I am using an abstract science, when there is an easy yes and no is not possible, though I have to say yes, otherwise I'll be out of the house. This is different aspect. And I have to show in my actions that is the answer is yes. But still, when the answer is very, very abstract science, we cannot use a yes and no phenomena. We need to have to develop a scale. Now, this scale of love, this scale of affection, this scale of awareness, this scale of perception, this scale of understanding, this scale of knowledge has to be validated by somebody, or somebody has to validate. So my second important take-home message is, once I have decided, my questionnaire is decided by my objective, I have to decide my answers of those questionnaire are clear-cut yes or no, or they are abstract science. Whenever there is an abstract science, most likely I am not able to make my own questionnaire, and I need to take somebody else's questionnaire because it's an abstract science. Now, my third take-home message is, can I develop my own scale because it's an abstract science? Can I make my depression scale? Can I make my perception scale? Can I make my emotion scale? Can I make my awareness scale? Can I make my knowledge scale? Can I make scale for love? If those scales are already available, then I am doing a worthless exercise only for my publication and promotion and publication. That's all. Because already data is there, and I'm creating a research waste. I'm sorry to use the blunt word, a research waste on something which is already available. And that's why the next foremost take-home message I need to decide. Once I have decided my objective needs an abstract science, abstract science needs a scale or a questionnaire which needs a validation. That means all questions where there is no clear-cut answer, the validation process is the must. If I say I have a diabetes or no, answer is yes or no, no validation is required. That's my second line of my PowerPoint, which says that I need to decide if the validation of questionnaire is required. If my answer is very clear-cut, yes and no, there cannot be a vague answer. There cannot be a strongly agree, disagree, neutral, and strongly agree and agree. Suppose my wife asks the same question, do you love me? And I say, I strongly agree, I strongly disagree, naturally, then I am out. Here is very clear-cut answer is not available, though I have to give clear-cut answer. That's a different part of it. But whenever these kind of scale is there, the requirement of validation is very, very much. That means second question I need to decide. Once I have decided, I'm again repeating this important point because people forget and directly jump to the statistics. Number 1 point, my questionnaire comes from my objective. Second, I decide, is my questionnaire needs to be validated or no? And if it's not an abstract science, it does not need validation. If the pre-test questionnaire is selected and pre-test questionnaire is given to you for this program, I had asked for putting one question. Do all questionnaires needs validation? Please write the answer as false. I'm giving you answer here. I don't know what you wrote in your PG test, but please write in the post that the answer is false, because all questionnaire do not need validation. Where the answer is very clear cut, yes or no, there is no validation required, because there is not going to be any change over a period of time. But where the thing you are majoring as a primary objective, which is an abstract science, it needs a validation. Now, third question comes, should I use my questionnaire or somebody else's questionnaire? If that, for that reason, I need to go to the literature review very nicely. Many times, all the faculties, PG comes and tell me, this is my parent article, this is my mother article, this is my grandfather article, this is my great grandfather article. There is only one article in the literature review, and some other people will come and tell, I am the only person who is doing this study. Nobody has done it ever in the lifetime. I don't think so that is possible in the Google search. Extensive review of literature is required to find out if somebody has also developed similar questionnaire which involves an abstract science needs validation. If somebody else has done it, then we need to see how my objective, which decides my questionnaire, is different from that existing questionnaire or the scale present. Many times, fortunately or unfortunately, these questionnaires are decided by Western population and Western researcher, and many of those questions do not put classically in our culture. And that's why there may be a need to develop a questionnaire in our culture. Again, it needs to be validated and then only be used. But there are many researchers who have a multinational studies where, as a part of the research, developing a, say for example, depression scale, the scale is available in English, the scale is available in Hindi, the scale is available in Tamil, scale is available in Telugu, scale is available in Kannada. That means all those languages are considered, their cross-culture aspect is also considered, and the questionnaire is developed. In this case, I should not take up on the project where the validation of the questionnaire is required, because it's already available and is also available in my own culture, my own language. If it is available in English and it is not available in my local language, what should I do? The simplest way is I should go and talk to that researcher. Can I use the scale and can I translate it? If permission is given, well and good. If the permission is not given, then we are again in soup. It's better we should think about validation by our own means. But if permission is given, just by mere translation, I am again repeating, just by mere translation of the scale does not mean the validation process is over. Many times people feel, I got a depression scale from somebody, I will translate it in Tamil, I will appropriately change certain words with the grammar and the phonetics and so many things, and now it is a validated scale. No, no, no. Unless the validation process has happened in my own culture, in my own system, naturally that is not a validated scale. So that means I have again landed up in a problem. First, somebody has done the similar study and developed the similar questionnaire which measures the abstract science. In such case, very good. If it is available in my own language, own culture, best. I'll use that and I'll drop my idea of developing a new questionnaire and validation. But if is not available in my own language, or the questions which are put in those questionnaire or the scale is not fitting to my culture, then I need to develop my own scale. I cannot use any scale which is being available. But what happens in case of a PG or a PhD scholar or a faculty? Time is very, very short. Everybody is running around with a short time. I have to finish my study in 3 months. I have to finish my study in 1 year. I don't think so. Validation of questionnaire can finish in a shortest time. Validation of questionnaire, it itself is a project by itself. That means if I have to develop a study, say I want to find out, say emotion scale, and my objective is to find out what is the level of emotion towards COVID in a general population. First, I will develop my own scale, which will take probably 6 months, probably 1 year, probably 2 years, and then use that scale for the emotion. That is the right way to do it. But unfortunately, what happens? I get a scale in Google search. I do not bother myself to see if that scale matches to my culture or no. I remodify, rephrase it, do something, some manipulation there, and my emotional scale is ready, which is totally wrong scientific. And that's why, first and foremost, objective decides the questionnaire. Objective will decide is the abstract science. Objective will tell me I need to develop my own questionnaire, or with literature I can get it some questionnaire which is available in my own culture. Now, once I have decided that there is no equivalent questionnaire available, or somebody has developed in English, but I want to convert into Tamil and use for my study, a repeat validation process will be required in Tamil, to be very bold and status, which people usually don't do it. They just merely translate in English. So now once I have decided I am going to use my scale into a so-called translation, then the validation process is required. Now also one important aspect of the validation required is something called as administration mode. Now what is the meaning of that? Sometimes people develop a scale for a Google form. That means it is a self-administration. I open the Google form, I fill up, nobody asks me questions. Some scales, people come and ask me question, I respond and they fill up my answer. Some people go into a detailed interview and then fill up my question. If you see at all the three levels, the administration of a scale is different. The validation process will also be different. Many times I have seen people who see in Google search a scale is available for self-administration, but since the guide has told you ask these questions to the people, they will ask the question, the purpose of the validation of the scale is lost. Same way, for making the Google form very easily, there are questionnaire which are available for the interview purpose, but people, to make it more and more simple in life, convert it to Google form and circulate. Since that scale was validated for the purpose of interview and then filling up of the questionnaire, doesn't holds validity when it comes to a self-administration. That means the validity revolves around not only on the abstract science and fitting to our culture and our language, but also fits to how it is going to be administered to the participants. That means if I have to develop a questionnaire tomorrow, which is an abstract science, it has to be first in English, it has to be in Tamil, it has to fit my culture, it has to fit my language, and it also I have to decide which mode it is going to be used, so that the validation process also involves only that particular mode. If I want my questionnaire to be validated in self-administration, also in interview or in any other form, all the three different types of validation has to be done in all these modes. Again, is going to be very, very tedious and difficult. Again, the most important revolving around the literature review. As I told you, the literature has to tell me if the existing scale is available or not available. If it is not available, then only I should think of developing the new scale for the abstract science. Otherwise, it becomes worthless. Each and every point of time, I have to talk to the experts. Who are those experts? The experts who are done the study on that particular topic, the experts who are having the idea on the process of validation of questionnaire, the experts who are the field data collector who have the knowledge about it. And we need to repeatedly talk to these experts to come to this questionnaire. Now, just take the example, say I assume that there is no depression scale available in the world which fits to our culture of South India. And I have decided I need to develop a validated questionnaire for assessing the depression. To be very, very specific, because it's not available, my objective demands to have a depression scale. Since it is not available in my own culture, my own language, and also not in the form of a self-administration, I decided to develop my objective as a depression scale. Now I am going to do enough literature review to find out what is depression. I'll talk to psychologists, I'll talk to the sociologists who are good in the validation of questionnaire, I'll talk to psychiatrists, I'll talk to medicine department to find out how the COVID depression occurs, because I decided to develop a depression scale only specifically for COVID. Naturally, any other valid depression scale may not hold true to assess the depression in a COVID patient. I'm again going with specific example where an existing validated scale may becomes invalid because my main theme or my objective is deviating to the specific task. I need to keep talking on the expert. I will find out from the literature what is the depression, etc., and I will develop my own questions, and probably I have to develop, say, about 100 questions. Many times people feel if I have to develop my question, which needs to be validated, is an abstract science, probably if I use 20 questions, 10 questions is more enough. No. When you want to develop something which is an abstract science, it has to be going into more detail, larger the number of the question, the process of validation will become more and more easy. And that's why when we start with the literature review and start consulting with the expert, probably in the depression scale, which I'm looking for, which is not available, which is going to measure my abstract science as my main theme, which needs validation, I'll start probably 150 questions or 150 so-called items in those questionnaires. Depending on the literature review, as well as consulting all the experts in psychology, sociology, medicine department, infectious disease people, etc., including COVID patients and relatives of COVID patients. I will consult everybody to find out what is the best kind of question should be there. And even if my aim is to have a question which is probably a shortest in nature, maybe 5 questions, 10 questions, 20 questions, but always I need to start with a large number of questions in the beginning. And once I decide my large number of questions, at each and every step, I'll keep talking to the expert. Really, this question makes a meaning. Many times what happens, we like to ask the same question in a different form. If you see all kind of scales, unfortunately, ask the same thing in a different form. I'll give one classical example. Do you love your parents? Is one question. Second question we will ask something related to the same aspect of the love, but in a different wording. Third question will ask the same thing in a different wording. And you will see that the same question is unnecessarily repeating, and this is creating a problem. And you will surprise why this fellow who has developed a validated questionnaire is asking the same aspect again and again. Because there is a concept of reliability, which is pure statistical in nature, unfortunately, when the calculation occurs. And it says that larger the number of questions, the questionnaire will have a good reliability. So what people do, unfortunately, which is like a misconduct, if they see, they prepare their questionnaire with 10 items and they realize that reliability is not good. They make those 10 questions in the similar wordings are 40 questions. Automatically, the reliability increases. Now, this kind of misconduct is happening only because, I'm again repeating, only because we have not put our brain what kind of questions should be there at the early stage. And that's why my request to all those people who are looking for an abstract science, which needs to develop a new validated questionnaire, please start at least 3 or 4 times of the number of questions which you expect to be there in the final question. The next step comes as a cognitive interview. Now, again, I will stress here in the cognitive interview because according to my knowledge, I put this question in the pre-test form. Probably it was given and you can answer that question very correctly. The question I asked, is the cognitive interview to be done for all the validation of the questionnaire? And the answer is yes. Please remember that answer, yes. And now I'll tell you why. What is the meaning of cognitive interview? Though the term appears to be complicated, it is a simple meaning. You read the question and tell me what comes in your mind. Say, I read the question, I love my parents. When I read, I love my parents, what is coming in mind? Okay, when I love my parents, when I read, I realize that how my parents have taken care during my childhood, how they helped me during my education, how my parents were coming when I was going down for playing, how they were playing with me. When I was not getting sleep, they were making me sleep all the nights. Many times my mother was awake throughout the night. And when I was probably not doing my work, they were becoming angry. So really they love me or not? You understand? When a person reads a subjective question on an abstract science, so many questions comes in their mind, and the cognitive interview is understanding of those questions when we come. And why this cognitive interview is important with the people is because it tells you if our questions which we have planned in the questionnaire for an abstract science really touching the right tone or no. And that's why cognitive interview is very, very important. As I told you, I started with my depression scale for COVID patient, discussing with everybody 150 questions in number. Though I wanted to have only 10 questions, I decided I will have 15 times more questions so that my quality of the questionnaire, when it is developed at the end, is fantastic. It really measures what it's supposed to measure. Then after cognitive interview, what will happen? I'll identify some experts, say medicine experts, psychology experts, some COVID patients, some COVID quarantine people, and I will tell them, please read this 150 questions and tell me what comes in your mind. They will read each question and they will tell me what comes in their mind. And I need to find out if really same thing, what I am going to ask is really perceived by the people or not. Otherwise, what happens? Many times I write the question, my meaning is something is different. but the patient who I'm going to ask, they will have a different meaning. And after that 150 question is over, I may realize that some questions are nothing but the repetition of earlier questions. Some questions are the repetition of earlier questions. Some questions are not required at all. Because, oh, okay, I say, only because my parents are giving me pocket money, I feel my parents love me. Some of the people may say, I don't think so, this question is necessary. Probably this is unnecessary, asking a specific thing. If majority of the people feel that when you're making a questionnaire for love, for parents, this questionnaire is not useful, as an expert, you need to decide if the question has to be there or no. And from that, after that cognitive interview is over, where each and every participant which you have involved talks about what comes in their mind from 150 questions, you will land up to 50 questions which are sensible enough for a questionnaire. Now the main journey starts, and that's why nowadays cognitive interview has become very, very important aspect in validation of questionnaire. And only last 10 years, you will see in the validation of questionnaire, the first and foremost important step becomes the cognitive interview, where you take a very, very small number. I'll not take a very big number. Probably I'll take, say, 3 patients. I'll take 3 quarantine people. Probably I'll take 1 or 2 psychologists. I'll take 1 or 2 medicine experts to tell me if the depression scale, what I'm preparing for COVID is worth or no, and what comes in their mind. And from there, that 150 scale questionnaire will become a 50 scale, 50 items questionnaire. And again, I'll talk to the expert and try to minimize the number of questions as much as required. But I need to keep in mind, if my question becomes very, very less, statistically, I will not get the reliability, because the reliability is a science of statistics, unfortunately, where the number of questions increases, the number of items increases, the reliability increases. And that's why I need to be very, very careful. A balance between the required number of questions and the required amount of reliability which is required. So once my cognitive interview is over, I have to finalize what is my final 30, 40 questions which I am going to decide to work on. Then these questions will be given to 30 people who are the actual people for which I am developing the question. Suppose I have developed a depression questionnaire for COVID positive patient, then I'll take those 30 questions to those 30 patients who are willing to participate in my study for the purpose of reliability. Or if I develop a questionnaire on depression for a only COVID quarantine patient, then I'll take it to them. If I have identified to all the family members whose patients are admitted and their depression scale, I'll take to those people. Reliability, usually we take around 30 patients or 30 individuals to assess the reliability. Now, main comes, what is the reliability means? Now, reliability or the reproducibility means you measure something today which is an abstract science. If that abstract science is not going to change, tomorrow when I ask after 1 week, I ask after 15 days, the answer should remain reasonably same. That is the reliability. And that's why when we conduct the exam, today I give my student 5 out of 10. Tomorrow I give 0 out of 10. Day after tomorrow I give 10 out of 10. There is no reliability in the marking system. So that's why reliability means reproducibility, where if the situation remains the same, if the phenomena remains the same, the answer should be almost similar. That's a reliability. And for that, the questionnaire validation process, the reliability is important aspect, because unless something is reliable, that means it's a reproducible, it cannot be valid. Suppose I ask today, how is your mood? Not very good. Tomorrow my mood changes. The phenomena has changes. I'll say my mood is very good. That means there is some problem with the reliability, because the phenomena has changed. And that's why we need to be very, very careful in the identification of reliability and estimation of reliability. That phenomena has to be static one. If the phenomena is static one, we can collect the data at 2 time points. And the 2 time points usually we called as test, retest reliability. You must have heard where the questionnaire is given today and the questionnaire information is again collected on the abstract science after 15 days or so. And we see if there is a reliability, the person who gave the answer earlier as a strongly agree or disagree remains a similar kind of answer after 15 days. But this test and retest reliability is only possible if the phenomena under study is same. Now just take the example. Somebody asked me, how it is your mood and depression, say on 1st January. I said, fantastic. You asked me today, how is your depression? I said, I am very much depressed. Why? Because the phenomena has changed. COVID second wave has come. When the phenomena under study, for which you are doing the study, if that changes, naturally the test and retest reliability cannot work and should not be measured. I'm again repeating, test and retest reliability, that is the measuring the answer today and after 15 days, is to be only done if the phenomena under study remains the same. That is the first type of the reliability called as test retest reliability. Reliability is nothing but the reproducibility. That means a similar type of answers have to come. If I ask the same question again and again to the person, when we must have taken so many times history to the patient. We ask first time, do you get pain in the abdomen? Patient says no. Then I again ask, do you have pain in abdomen? He says no. When I ask 7 or 8 times, patient will say, yes, I have a pain in abdomen. That means the question is less and less reliable because the answer is changing. So we need to be very, very careful when we phrase our questions, we draft our questions. There cannot be any tiltation on one type of the answer possible. So test and retest reliability is only possible if the phenomena remains the same. And once the phenomena remains the same, you measure the items today, you measure the items after 15 days and see if they are similar. Again, 30 patients are good enough for assessing reliability. And what you do is you put all the answers scale from say 1 to 5, where probably you can take 1 as a strongly agree, 2 can be strongly agree, third can be neutral, fourth can be disagree, and the fifth can be strongly disagree. You give the number. You have 20 questions. You add up the answer of the numerical value. Prepare one Excel column for this value for 30 patients. You prepare for second one and you do some kind of a correlation to see if the correlations are sufficient enough to match the answer. If that is happening, it is called as test retest reliability. And classically people measure something called as intra-class correlation. Some people also measure a simple correlation also. I don't want to go into the statistics here because my ultimate aim for a student to take home important scientific message rather than going to the statistics. Second type of reliability possible is called as parallel form reliability. That means I have two depression scale. If both measure the same phenomena of depression, their answer should be similar, very similar. Okay, and if the answers are similar, their correlation will be good or their intra-class correlation will be relatively very good. Very simple answer. But here, if there is already one existing form is there, why I should waste my time in creating a new form? You have to be very, very clear. And that's why many times people and a scientist becomes very happy to have a high reliability score in the parallel form. If suppose my reliability score is 1, I'm again repeating is 1, which is the highest between the two forms, I have done a worthless job because I have developed the same form again, which is already existing in the literature. I have done unnecessary research waste. And that's why I need to be very, very careful when we look at the parallel form reliability. We have to really make sure the new form which we are developing, it is has some purpose than the existing form which is present. Third kind of reliability which is possible is called as Cronbach's alpha or internal consistency. This is the commonest form of consistency what people measure in the reliability, because many times the forms are not available. Say, I don't think so any depression form with COVID is positive. So there is no possibility of parallel form reliability because no form is possible. Can I do test retest reliability? Probably not, because COVID phenomena is going to change from day to day basis, time to time basis. Probably test retest reliability is also not possible. Then only thing possible is the internal consistency, where I again enter the data in the Excel sheet. Probably Excel can help me to calculate the Cronbach's alpha, or I can use SPSS or any kind of software to calculate the Cronbach's alpha. What it does is it add up all the items value and create a calculation which is known as classically Cronbach's alpha. I don't want to go into statistical detail and the calculation detail. Any Cronbach's alpha value or the reliability value more than 0.6 or 0.7 is considered very good. 0.8 is fantastic. 0.9 is still fantastic. 1 is fantastic. But when people go for high reliability, I have some issues with that. Why we are duplicating the work? That means there is some problem. But when we are measuring internal consistency, it is very good. It is very good to say that because the consistency is very good. But in parallel form, I am duplicating the work. In test reset, there is a problem. And that's why I should be very happy, even if my reliability comes around 0.7. I should not aim too much reliability. But here, again, to come back to that issue of more question gives more reliability. And that's why, unfortunately, people do not apply their mind with the literature review, with the consultation with expert, and they do not come out with more questions, and they finish their study of reliability with 30 people, and they realize, oh, I'm very sorry, I am getting reliability 0.3. Now what should I do? They will increase the same type of question again and again. Same question will be repeated in a different verbatim to ask the same phenomena, and then again they will go for reliability with 30 patients. They realize, fantastic, I got reliability of 0.8, I have achieved the target. But that's not the real way of just duplicating the question. We have to start from the beginning so that each and every aspect is taken into consideration. So these are the largely three types of reliability which we look at it. Test, retest, the phenomena has to remain the same. The parallel form where the two forms are available, but here we need to be very, very careful. Duplication on form is a waste of everybody's time. And finally, we look at the internal consistency or the Cronbach's alpha. Calculation can be done easily by any statistical software or Excel. Anything above 0.7 is reasonably good to have reliability. Any questionnaire which is not reliable cannot be valid. And that's why reliability is the first backbone to start with looking at the validity. But in the reverse way also, if any question which is very, very reliable but is not valid, it is also worthless. And that's why there's a need to have a balance between reliability and validity. Say, for example, I ask somebody a question. Every time the person gives the same answer, but they have not understood the meaning of that question, then naturally the validity is lost. I'll give a classical example. I'll ask a small child, say 10-year child, do you think your parents love you? Okay, now every time he says yes, 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 means the answer is reliable. My questionnaire is reliable. But is it valid? I'll ask him, tell me what is the meaning of love for you? The child says, when my parents give me pocket money of 1,000, that means they love me. If they don't give me mobile, that means they don't love me. If I ask them a tablet, they give me a tablet to play, that is love. That means here there are some validity issues because that is not the true love which I should to measure. And that's why I'm again repeating my two more take-home messages. A questionnaire which is not reliable cannot be valid. At the same time, if I have a reliable question, but it is not valid also, it becomes worthless. Now come to what is validity. A validity simply means, in the simple understanding, it measures what it's supposed to measure. Take the classical example of a weighing machine. When I will say my weighing machine is valid, when I stand up and my weight is 100 kg, it measures truly 100 kg. Suppose there is some error in my measuring instrument, a weighing machine, every time anybody stands, it gives 5 kg more. That means it is not valid because it is not measuring what it's supposed to measure. And that's why validity is the aspect, what it measures, what it's supposed to measure. And validity is again second important aspect of the validation of question. Now, there are n number of ways you can measure the validity. First and foremost, simple validity is called as face validity. You look at the questionnaire and see if it looks like a depression question. Suppose I prepare a depression question for COVID patients. I give it to some of the expert and some of the good friend of mine. And I ask, just read this question on the face value. Do you think it is a questionnaire which looks like for COVID patients? Their emotion, their depression? If they say yes, probably the face validity is achieved. Is not the classical validity, but the textbook describes something called as face validity. On the face of the questionnaire, does it look as a valid questionnaire? Second comes as a content validity. Now, content validity is probably the same thing what I am doing consultation with experts to find out if my content matches with the question we ask. I'll give one pathetic example to understand the content validity. I want to ask my 7th-year-old student, the 7th standard student, what is 5 plus 5? That person says 10. Okay. And same question I ask for assessing the calculation to a medical student. Now here, the purpose there, when I asked the 7th standard student, it was mathematics. But when I am asking same 5 plus 5 here, I am asking with respect to, say, for example, COVID prevalence or COVID death or COVID mortality. The purpose is changing. I cannot ask the same question to each group because the content validity is different. Here in a medical student, when I am asking prevalence, though it is a numerical term, I cannot use those simple mathematics which was there. At the same time, 7th standard student, I cannot ask the questions which are not relevant to the content which they should know. And that's why content validity is described in the book as a second aspect of the validity, which is required with the consultation of expert. And as an expert, you feel the content validity is there. And that's why if you see the space validity and content validity are basically not a true validity. They are just looking at the appearance. On face, it looks very good. On content wise, it looks very good or no. And that's why the classical validity are the two validity, which is called as criterion validity and construct validity. Now, just to briefly describe what is criterion validity is something like a screening test and diagnostic test. If we remember, like take the example of classical example of RT-PCR. It says that if the person is COVID positive, there is a say about 70 to 80% chance that RT-PCR will be positive. And nowadays in the second wave, even many COVID positive patients are coming as a false negative. That's the inherent characteristic of the test where it is becoming positive and not positive, and what is the sensitivity and what is the specificity. Same way, criterion validity compares with the gold standard. Now, here in case of COVID, we consider as RT-PCR as a gold standard. Same way, when I'm looking at the depression, I have to identify some gold standard, and I say, for example, back depression scale, which is a classical depression scale used at worldwide, is a gold standard, and I compare that new scale with the existing back depression scale, then it is something called as criterion validity. Again, statistical calculation comes into picture with the answer and the responses which a patient gives for both the things. And last comes is the construct validity. Construct validity involves two aspects. One is the language wise, it measures what it's supposed to measure, and also statistically many people say that a factorial analysis is one of the way to measure the constructive validity. I again do not want to go into the factorial analysis. It is one of the important aspects in statistics when it comes to validation of questionnaire. Again, your statistical friend can help you in calculation. It simply says that you have developed one nice questionnaire on the basis of the science. Science is more important. Biology is more important. Don't run only behind the statistics. Unless something is willing and statistically, biologically important, then only statistical component comes into the picture. So you ask all those questions to the people, and then they apply something called as factorial analysis. In the technical terms, they call it as a principal component analysis with loading. I don't want to use that terminology. Just assume one of your statistical friend or a statistician will help you to do the factorial analysis, and certain parameters will come, and on the basis of you decide which questions are good to be kept in the questionnaire and which questions are not good, which have to be thrown from the questionnaire. So I again come from the starting. In the beginning, I started to have 150 questions. After cognitive interview, I decided I can have only 40 questions which are important. When I was doing a reliability, I realized that probably some of the questions are still there which can be thrown out of the questionnaire. Then I went for factorial validity analysis, and I realized that out of those 30 questions, probably only 10 or 12 questions are very, very important, which I can keep it, which are really good on the basis of factorial analysis. Now, in factorial analysis, there is something called as 0.5 cutoff. That means once you get the report of the factorial analysis, say from SPSS, you look at all those questions which are having the value of 0.5 and above. Statistically, it says that all those questions having 0.5 value and above are very, very good. It is not p-value. P-value, we always talk about 0.05. Here I am talking about factorial analysis, which is 0.5 and not 0.05. So any value which comes above 0.5 is considered as a good question. But again, I repeat, don't look at the statistics. Look at your biological science. If you feel the question is important, even if it doesn't show a factorial analysis value of 0.5, still use them. At the same time, a questionnaire on the statistics shows a value of 0.5 and nice. But if you feel that question biologically is worthless, please don't use. That means the moral of the whole story is finally designing the questionnaire, taking the questions in that questionnaire, and the whole validation process revolves around the biological sciences and not purely on the statistical. And finally, we need to decide It has to be useful for the people for which this questionnaire is developed. And that's why whenever we do the reliability and validity, the same group of people has to be used. Now for validity, usually we say 300 to 500 is the usual sample size for doing a factorial analysis. So now if I see my sample size here, I will start with my cognitive interview where I'll take only 2-3 patients of each category. I will do a reliability study where I'll take 30 patients. And if I want to do a test, retest reliability, same 30 patients have to be repeated again, filled up questionnaire one more time. And for the factorial analysis, I need to have 300 to 500 patients filling up the same. But finally, the most important is the practical use after the sample size. What is the meaning of the practical use? I should develop this validation only in those patients actually for which the questionnaire is developed. Say, for example, my questionnaire is developed for the COVID patients. If I assume I do not have access to the COVID patient, I talk to, say, for example, COVID quarantine people, and those people I develop, then my actual people who participated in the validation process are not the same for which I am devising the questionnaire, then again the purpose is lost. And that's why practical use is very, very important, and it should become the first important part when you decide your sample. If my questionnaire is for first MBBS student, then I have to do reliability and validity in the first MBBS student. If my questionnaire is supposed to be for a dental student, naturally my reliability and validity process has to be done only in the dental student and is very, very important. So just to come at the last thing, important take home message, even if you have not understood many of the things which I have spoken about, first and foremost, let my objective decide what is my data collection form. Let my objective decide a questionnaire is required or no. Let my objective decide my question is a straightforward answer, yes or no, or correct answer, or it is going to be an abstract science. If it is an abstract science, I need validation of the questionnaire. Then I need to look at the literature review. If the similar questionnaire or scale is available in the market, if it is available in the market, does it fit to my culture and my language? If it fits to my culture and my language, also fits to my objective, do not waste time in validating the procedure. But at the same time, just mere translation and changing some words and telling that that is a validated scale is totally wrong thing. And finally, if I realize the objective which I have decided, a no scale is available, then I need to develop my own questionnaire with good amount of literature review, talking to the experts, start with a larger number of questions to begin with, do cognitive interview where you ask the people what is coming in their mind and decide what are the final questions to be there from 150 to say probably 30, 40, then do reliability in 30 patients. If the phenomena is going to say you do test and retest reliability, or otherwise only do internal consistency and calculate the Cronbach's alpha, anything more than 0.7 is be happy with that. Then you take 300 to 500 patients after finding out the questionnaire is reliable. If the questionnaire is not reliable, you cannot go to the step of validity unless you develop the reliable questionnaire, because anything which is not reliable cannot be valid also. And that's why if my first step, my question is not reliable, again I have to work at reliability and get my questionnaire fit for the reliability sciences with Cronbach's alpha of 0.7 and more, then only I can look at the validity. And then at the validity, finally, we can think of face validity, we can think of content validity. If any gold standard is there, we can think of criterion validity. And finally, the most important, we need to look at the construct validity, how those questions are framed. And one of the way of looking is the factorial analysis, where after doing 300 to 500 data collection, I give it to my statistician friend who does the factor analysis. All questions with 0.5 value are good enough, but my biology is more important. If I feel biologically I need that question, I should keep it, even if the value is less than 0.5 or more than 0.5. Statistics doesn't play the role. If my value is 0.5 and also a good question required as per my biological sciences, I keep the questionnaire. And from probably after factorial analysis, I come back from those 30 questions to probably 10 or 20 questions. And I need to always remember the practical use is very, very important. Everywhere in my reliability, in my validity, the population whom I am using for my validation process should be same for which I am developing the questionnaire. If my questionnaire is for MBBS student, it has to be validated in MBBS student. If it is for BDS student, it has to be for BDS student. If it has to be in a patients with diabetes and complication, it has to be with the diabetes and complication. If you keep on changing the population, the whole validation science changes, and it is being said that if the population is changes, the questionnaire is no longer a validated questionnaire. And finally, you develop as shorter questionnaire as possible, which is reliable and valid. Because I have seen the questions which are going to 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. People will not fill up those questions properly. They will fill up as the people fill up the feedback form of any program without reading the questionnaire. That's why our shortest question with my objective, with good reliability and good validity is only the best questionnaire or the scale possible for me to devise. Thank you very much. I hope I was audible throughout the thing, and unnecessary, I never wanted to drag statistics, and probably if those take home message of the concepts are taken, probably the purpose is served. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks, sir. The session is now open for questions.
There is somebody who has said from Scientific AVMC, can I ask question? I don't know because I'm not able to identify. It is a private
Yes.
message has come to me. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Please ask me question. If I don't know the answer, I'll say openly I don't know. I'll come back to you. It will improve my knowledge.
Sir is open for questions. You can ask. Dr. Manju has said it's an excellent talk by you, sir.
Thank you very much. But my more important, if those so-called whatever I have said, the science has to be implemented. If we go back to same Google search to decide what is my questionnaire and my dissertation, the whole purpose is lost.
Yes.
And biology is more important for developing a questionnaire and not the statistics and 0.05 value, which has to decide what questions to be asked. And that's why clinical relevance and biological relevance is the most important.
Yes.
See, if we are not asking questions, means only two things. Either I have done excellently as it was told, or I have done so pathetically that I don't know what to ask this pathetic fellow. But both I will take as a compliment, no problem. Do a translated version of the scale needs statistical validation. First, I will correct the statement which is asked. Validation is not the statistical process. Validation is the clinical or the scientific process where statistics is one of the important component, but not the only component. So when I say factorial analysis is one of the important small component, and that's why I'll not use the word statistical validation. I'll again repeat what I said. In factorial analysis, the value which should be there, it should be more than 0.5. Suppose I take a one question. My parents love me because they gave me the pocket money. This question gives 0.5 in my statistical factorial analysis. But I, as an expert, feel I don't think so. This is a real question should be there. Even if statistically it is 0.5, I'll throw that question from my questionnaire. Because my biology, my clinical sciences are more important. At the same time, my mother was awake whole night when I was not well. That is the important question. Though in factorial analysis, it doesn't show 0.5, I will still include it because it is clinically or biologically relevant to me in my abstract science. And that's why it's not the statistical validation, is only validation. Now I'll come to the main question of your translated version. I'll again repeat to my take-home message what I said. If I get a validated questionnaire outside, which is not fitting in my culture, my own language, any kind of translation, any kind of manipulation, any kind of rephrasing is unvalidated or invalid questionnaire. I'm again repeating. That means I take that depression scale and translate in Tamil, translate in Hindi. I say original version is translated. I have a good English knowledge. I have a good Tamil knowledge. I have a good Hindi knowledge. I translate it very nicely. Do you think it's a validated questionnaire? Answer is no. Even if you are making some minor changes in the questionnaire to fit my culture, still it is a non-validated questionnaire. And that's why whenever we do the validation of questionnaire, we have to develop questionnaire in the language which we are going to practically use. If I'm going to use a questionnaire today, among my MBBS students, an English questionnaire can work. But if I'm going to use that questionnaire, which is validated in English, but tomorrow I'm going to use for my patients who knows only Tamil, and I translate and ask them, it is an invalid questionnaire. I'm again repeating, the validity also involves the language, also involves the culture, also involves the administration process. If the questionnaire, which is developed in English by mere translation or adjusting words in different language, is not valid. If you just minorly change the word, replace them, is not valid. If you convert from self-administration to interview because people are not able to understand that language, is invalid, is not a validated questionnaire. The administration process along with the translation, culture and the language is also important to call it as a validated questionnaire. I know that by putting so many ifs and buts, people will think better not to use any validated questionnaire because it's the biggest headache. Better be safe with that and not to use it. And that's why I'll come to my first line. Develop your own questionnaire because you know your objective well. Only if it's an abstract science, look at the questionnaire which is developed by somebody else, or you need to devise your own. If it's a clear-cut science which has a yes and no answer, please don't take anybody's questionnaire. You develop your own questionnaire where no validation of the question is required.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, madam. Madam, please ask. Please ask, madam.
Cognitive interview. Validation. We take the
Ma'am,
sample of
your audio is not clear, ma'am. It's like
second. How is it clear?
no, ma'am. I think it's because of the Bluetooth.
The questionnaire, we take the sample population which is likely to answer the questionnaire, one group of them, and then we'll ask them to go through the questionnaire and see if it makes sense to them and all that. No, in a cognitive interview, do we also need to include experts and other people into that instead of only the participants?
No, madam. The consultation with expert to say that the questionnaire is good with respect to my theme is a consultation with expert. A cognitive interview is only for those people who are actually going to land up filling those forms later on if it is valid. And that should be very, very small number because cognitive interview exercise is very, very difficult. Suppose somebody gives me 150 questions and I have to tell each question, read properly and what comes to my mind. It will take probably 8 hours of the day to really do a cognitive interview for 150 questions. And that's why we can just ask probably 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are probably the best suitable for that to understand if my thinking what I am asking and what they are thinking in their mind is same. And again, I repeat, why I am doing this cognitive interview? Because my theme is abstract science, a subjective aspect. If it's my clear-cut aspect, diabetes present or absent, cognitive interview will not come, validation will not come. So I always ask only to those patients or the subjects who are going to fill in the future. And it's going to be very, very small number, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's all. Maximum 10, not more than that. Just to understand what I am asking is really subjectively perceived by them or not.
Is there any tool available to check this validations at the cognitive interview? Do we have some kind of a tool to say those people are saying what they have really understood?
No. Actually, madam, what is happening? Unfortunately, with our growth in the medical science, I think madam has logged on. No, madam is there. Unfortunately, in growth in medical science, we always revolve around 0.05 and statistics. So I don't think so that when we are looking at the validation of a questionnaire, which is required for an abstract science, any statistical tool can help us because it's not statistics, it's an abstract science, which is abstract. That's why we are assessing the abstract science. So there is no tool to say that cognitive interview really, only when they tell me as an expert, I should perceive if that is correct or not. That's all. So is all again subjective, and probably the person who is doing the research and the group of the research team members are the best to perceive when the person gives answer, it really matches with the questions which are identified. So there is no statistical tool. And even if you see some statistical tool in the internet, in the Google search, please don't use, because we are killing the science where the abstract science is judged by us. Sometimes, Mahalakshmi madam, you know me, I am very blunt. And that's why I said this is the only thing, because what happens, madam? I have seen people do all kind of wrong things, and after 10 years, that wrong thing becomes a science. I remember just on the off-way track, one of my friend PJ came to me with one of the good journal, which is PubMed Index and so many things. In the abstract, it says the study is cross-sectional case-controlled randomized study. Now, I don't think so. Any study can be a cross-sectional, also case control and randomized also. But what happens if the same study is repeated by PG, by my friend, n number of 10 times, a literature will become, there is something called as cross-sectional case control randomized study. And that's why misnomers are going to be generated by our repeated experiences of wrong things. And that's why I like to put very clearly, this is not happening. If it is happened in the literature, please ignore it. There is one more question. When do the reliability check with small number of samples? Is it feasibility that we are checking? No, feasibility is something different. Reliability is something different. Feasibility means my people are able to understand. Say for example, I develop a questionnaire in English. Okay, I will tell my PG who knows proper Tamil, a spoken Tamil. I am again repeating spoken Tamil. And that person PG translates in a spoken Tamil. Now I give the same English questionnaire to somebody who is expert in Tamil literature. That translation and the spoken Tamil translation will be totally different. The feasibility is to check if my patients are able to understand that language. Now what will happen? A spoken Tamil questionnaire will be better understood by my people compared to a Tamil high quality literature translated version. This matter can happen with any language, including English, though I am Hindi speaking predominantly in my mother tongue, but still so many Hindi words I myself don't know, to be very honest. And that's why hardcore of language also creates, that is the feasibility. If I give this questionnaire to my people, which has to be filled up in 30 minutes, do it makes a filling in 30 minutes or no? That is feasibility. Reliability is if I ask a question to a particular person today, the similar kind of answer will come in a due course of time. Or my all questions ask the similar phenomena that is assessed by Cronbach sulfur. If you ask me some question today and my phenomena of understudy remains the same, I should ask the similar answers after 15 days. Or my all questions ask the similar phenomena on my depression, then only the questionnaire is reliable and is internally consistent. Feasibility is only looking at if I am able to do it properly or no. If I want to drive, I drive in my campus, I drive on highway. Driving in campus is a feasibility, can I drive or no? That is not reliability. But my reliability will come when I drive n number of times, but still do not meet with an accident. That is my reliability. Feasibility is only looking at things are happening or not happening as I wanted. Reliability is, are we going to get the similar answers at multiple times, or all my questions are answering the same phenomena? I hope I have not confused you more, but whatever, even if I confuse you, there are two pre-test questionnaire, and hopefully same pre-test questionnaire will be repeated in the post-test. Number one is cognitive interview required everywhere, say yes. And the first question is, all questionnaires have to be validated, answer is no. If you take these two take-home messages for post-test questionnaire, I am very happy. Thank you.
That's excellent, sir. It's like saying out the answers. I'm like, we are too happy now.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
James, there is a question by Dr. Vishnu Bhatt in the chat box. Sir, can you take that? Vishnu Bhatt sir has asked a question.
Sorry,
Sir,
I'm not able to see. I'm very sorry. I'm not able to see.
Sir is asking, is it better to do a pilot study when you develop a new questionnaire?
Madam, what happens is many times when we are talking about pilot study is nothing but the feasibility study. I again compare with the word. Many times pilot study we use for all kind of small sample study. The actual pilot study doesn't mean a small sample size study. The other meaning of pilot study is feasibility. And whatever I have answered earlier for feasibility also holds true. But when I'm looking at the questionnaire, a validation where I'm going to go for reliability with 30 patients and then validity with factorial analysis for 300 to 500 people, I cannot do this kind of work unless I do with a reasonable good number of patients. And I do not think so. Anytime I will think of doing feasibility with 30 patients as well as 300 to 500 patients. It will be very, very small in numbers. So I do not think so. Validation of process can be done in a pilot mode. It has to be done in the full-fledged mode. And again, to repeat, I do reliability with 30 patients. I analyze. I realize that my question is not reliable. I have to again repeat the reliability. I have to keep repeating the reliability till I get the reliable questionnaire. Then only go to jump to validity. If my question is not reliable, it cannot be valid. And after validity, after those 300 and 500 patients and factorial analysis, I realize that my questionnaire is not valid. Again, the whole purpose is lost and my rocket is gone into the water because the validity is not achieved. And that's why it's very, very difficult process. We should not think of doing in a pilot mode. Please compare pilot study as a feasibility study rather than doing a full-fledged so-called pilot study in validation process, because it's very, very tedious process and people develop frustration at the end of the whole validation of questionnaire when they get not reliable, non-valid questionnaire, and unfortunately they have to manipulate because they have to pass through some kind of a degree designation or whatever it may be. And that's why again I'll say, please use your own questionnaire. Please use questionnaire which fits to my culture, my language, developed by somebody else, rather than jumping in the water without knowing the swimming.
Cool, sir. We'll do, sir. Thanks, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more question is there, but I don't know
Yes, sir.
whether it is time.
No, I will just say, I will just say one line. Please don't think validation as a statistical. That's why I never use any statistics in my PowerPoint. If you understand the concept and the validation, abstract science, statistics have no direct role in the validation process. It only helps me. That's all.
Done, sir. That answers that question also, ma'am. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks, sir. That was too informative,
Thank you
sir.
very much. Thank you, Mahalakshmi madam. Thank you, all of you from the administrative side, deans and all those things. I do not know them personally, but at least one time I'm meeting. Thank you, all of you. Really, it was a good thing to share with all of you. Thank you.
We'll again be meeting you on one more session, sir. Day 8, May 13th.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. I have marked it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We are
Thank
expecting for the day, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks, sir. And for the participants, we have got some three informations. One regarding the sessions for tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be like 2 sessions. One will be by Dr. Amol Dongre on steps in protocol development, and second will be by our Dean, Dr. P.F. Kotur, on critical appraisal of journal article. So for that second session, we need, as ma'am said at the start of the session, like a journal will be given and it will be divided into certain parts, and critics have to be done for each part. So we are expecting 5 people. One is open, anyone can nominate for it. And one we are expecting from pre-para, one from clinical, one from nursing, and one from allied health sciences. So it's up to you. You can vote for it. From anyone likes to make an attempt on from pre and paraclinical departments. Nobody wants to volunteer?
Dr. Sudha.
Sudha ma'am.
It's okay. We'll put.
Okay.
We are not going to get any volunteers, I think. So
Yes,
let's just randomly pick up names.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sudha. Okay. From clinical side.
From clinical side.